Welcome to Chapter 3, Grouping by Time. So now we're going to group our rows into independent spans of time. This material will be very similar to the material in the grouping data part where we use the group by method and then aggregated those groups. But instead of grouping by a column, we're going to group by some amount of time. So this could be a month. So every month of data will be its own independent group, or a year, or 3 months, or a week, or a day, or an hour. We get to decide what the span of time is, and all the rows in that span of time will form those independent groups, and then we can aggregate as normal or just do anything else to that group that we would like. All right, so here are some examples, like finding the average price per month, finding the maximum price per year. All right, we're going to read in our stocks data set, putting the date time into the index. And so here is the syntax. It's going to look very similar to our group by syntax, except we're going to use a method called resample instead of group by. We're still going to have the same components. There's a grouping column, aggregating method, except this time our grouping column is going to be in the index over here, and we're not going to give it actually the column. We're actually going to give it an offset alias, which will correspond to that amount of time. So resample is just a special method. It's very similar to group by. You're just indicating the pandas, how am I grouping this data frame? And you need to have your date time column in the index for resample to work like this. All right, and then the second part is the exact same as we learned before with the ag method. You can do more than just aggregation, but we're going to begin with aggregation. That's probably the most common thing to do with your groups. All right, let's see how this works. Let's find the average closing price of Amazon for every month. So resample really just means group by time, and we will group we're going to say month. Here are the offset aliases. I have the page open up over here. So M for month, and then we're going to do dot ag. And we'll just say mean, Amazon mean. This is the column you get to create. The aggregating column will be the column name itself, and the aggregating function will be mean like this. All right, great. So there we go. So that's how you get the average price per month. And you can see over here the new label is just every month gets its own label. Now it does show the very last date. That's just what pandas chose to return. It could have just returned just the entire month of October, but it does show the last day. But really this means every day in October, every day in November, every day in December, and so forth. So very similar syntax. If you understood the group by material, then you should understand this material. It is basically the same. All right, let's just group by different amounts of time. We can group every week like this. We can create a new column called number of days, and we can aggregate any of them. We'll say size. So this is the number of trading days in that particular week, just so that we can have that metric there as well. All right, so when we group by month, it does show the very last day. If you do month start, it'll show the very first day. Notice the values over here do not change whether you're at month start or month end, because it's just aggregating that entire month. We can aggregate by year. We can aggregate by quarter. And we can actually do some anchored offset aliases. So let's just say we aggregate by week, and actually week is not good here. Let's just do by year, but let's just say July is the very last day of the year. So this goes from really August 1st. Let's just change it to June actually. So this is saying the year July 1st all the way to June 30th is 1 year. So we do that. So that's pretty cool. So you can anchor the offset aliases. You can do by quarters, right? So we can say the quarter, say say a quarter that ends in February. So every quarter, and then 3 months from each of those. So that looks good. You can also group by more than one consecutive offset alias period. So that means you can put a number over here. You can say we can group by 2 weeks of time. By default, this is 2 weeks ending on Sunday. You can have 2 weeks of time ending on a different day, like Wednesday. That will also work. So it's getting all those days in those 2 weeks of time. And it is taking the mean. It's just doing these aggregations over here. So this really, you should be familiar with these from the last video when we did the as frequency method. This time, instead of sampling like one row for every one of those frequencies, we're just grouping all of the rows that can fit within that frequency. So this entire 2 week period, every independent 2 week period ending on a Wednesday forms a group. This is every quarter that ends in, or anchored to February. So every 3 month period. This is just also another 3 month period, but ending in a different time. This is every week forms a group. So hopefully you understand how that works. Now, all of the other syntax still is the same. So we do resample of week, and then if we can just call a method like this, and it'll be applied to all of the columns. So all of the other group by syntax that you remember, and I'm not going to go through it right here, but there's all those alternative syntaxes, they also work. So if you just call an aggregation over here, it will work on every single column like this. If you want to choose a specific column, you can do so like this. So Microsoft like this dot mean. So we'll just get the mean of Microsoft. That's just another way of aggregating, just a different syntax, which I said we covered before. All right, so wrapping it up, resample is just like group by. You need to have the date time in the index. You give it an offset alias. You can make it a complex one like this with multiple offset aliases and an anchor. And then you use .ag in the same exact way that you used with group by.